your child choose Seattle University? Anyone? Kat?
Alex chose Seattle University because it is a smaller Jesuit school. And he loved that he was entered into the computer science program as a freshman, and that basically his computer science program was mapped out over 4 years. And so it was really good for him to be able to have everything mapped out and not have to worry about taking core classes and applying to get in to a computer science program.
Katya?
So Sophie was choosing between a large public research university and Seattle University, and we knew much less about Seattle University, I have to say. And after we visited the admitted student events and campus, Sophie just fell in love with Seattle University. And I have to say that it has absolutely turned out to be the right choice for her. And I'll just give you a few of the reasons that really spoke to her. Is the environment is super supportive in terms of the professors. Your ability as a student to access the professors is very easy, and it's genuine that the professors just want these kids to succeed. So they're just very responsive and accessible. She thinks it's easy to make new friends on campus. She says the vibe is very inclusive and welcoming to kids from all walks of life, and it's also diverse, and it really feels like it's not just a talking point at this university. She also really just loves the Seattle area, and because there's so much to do around campus, but then also beyond campus, the broader Seattle community. So she's really enjoyed that aspect of the school. And then just a couple more points is that, you know, it just feels like a good tight-knit community for her. And she came from a large public high school, and so she's really loved the fact that the classes are quite small, and like I said, just a very welcoming vibe. And then I'll just add a plug in that as a parent, when we're looking at the schools, I also thought it was really great that Seattle University is near so many employers, and the access, you know, just thinking as a parent, like making sure your kid gets a job. There's just tons of opportunities. She's going through the recruitment process right now for an internship, and she's getting a lot of interviews. So just all around, it's been a fantastic experience for Sophie.
That's great to hear. Thanks.
If I were to jump in for my son, Simon, I think there were really two factors. First and foremost was Seattle. So he was really interested in being in Seattle. I had mentioned he was a transfer student, and he had started out on the East Coast. Unfortunately, he lost his dad. We lost my husband his freshman year. And when Simon wanted to move closer back towards home, Seattle University was just such a great option for him. The other thing that really drove him to Seattle University was the business school. The Albert School of Business provides a phenomenal education. The students have an incredible track record on job placement, and he was able to come in the middle of sophomore year directly into the accounting major, which is what he knew he wanted to do.
Great.
And then for my daughter, Catherine, she went to a smaller private school, and the colleges that we looked at were all over. There were a lot of schools in California that we were considering, as well as some back east. And in the end, it was the one right in our backyard that turned out to be the best fit for her. And unlike the other moms who are whose kids knew exactly what they wanted, that wasn't Catherine's path. So she was more in a pre-major and tried all sorts of different things. And then she found the comp sci, and it's been a great fit for her. So I can't underscore how nice it was for her to get a variety of different, exposed to a variety of different things, and then to find where she really shone. And then as part of the computer science program, they have a capstone their senior year where they're actually put in a small group of 3 to 4 folks on site at a business, and they get business mentorship throughout the whole year. So we're really looking forward to that.
That's great. My son went to the business school as well, Connie, and was gainfully employed in this field right after graduation, which made us very happy as parents. Gosh, we have so many questions here. for some of you parents, we know this may be your first student going off to college. For some, it may be many down the line, but an issue that's always come up, I think, is how does your student adjust to kind of living independently and responsibly? What tips might you share for folks as they're having a student transition to this new level of adulthood, and at Seattle U? How did they manage that transition?
I'll say something fairly mundane, but I know before my son started freshman year, he announced that he was going to start doing his own laundry. And I was like, yay. But I think there are some things that you can do as parents before your kids even go off to really help them think through the transitions, whether it's helping them understand how to manage their allowance and their pocketbook, whether it's maybe having worked with them over their study habits and helping to reinforce those things that are going to really serve them well when they get to school. But I think as parents, there's that constant thing of how much do you just stay away and let them figure it out on their own, and how much do you try to provide a little bit of guidance? And I would just say seize every opportunity for your kids to start showing their independence right now.
Anyone else want to share? I appreciate the laundry response, Connie, because it sounds simple, but that is an important thing. And our residence halls all have plenty of washers and dryers in them, so students can do that. Katya.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that Sophie told me that there's so many activities and clubs on campus, and when school started up, there's just everybody's a buzz, and there's tables outside, and you can really, there's a whole day dedicated to where these different clubs showcase what they are about. And that she said that's like the easiest way to meet people. But then the other thing is, just because her class sizes were pretty small, as she just said, it was so easy to make friends. And of course, living in the dorm for the first 2 years is just a big place where she made some of her best friends, and she's still hanging out with that same group of girls. And one other thing I'll just mention is that she definitely was not like kind of desirous or needing like a sorority or fraternity type of life, and so she was actually really happy that Seattle U doesn't even have that.
Right. Anybody? Would any of you like to talk about kind of your students' experience living in our residence halls? Of course, this year has been quite different, and next year we hope to be more in a 2-person per room situation. Everything, if everything goes as we hope in terms of COVID, but just what was hall life like for your students?
I can jump in on that one if you like. So Catherine moved into Xavier the first year, which I think is one of the older ones there, and she had a roommate. She did the luck of the draw, and she wound up having a really nice experience with her. And then second year, she went over to Chardon, which is, I think it's a converted, I'm not sure if it was a converted elderly home or something, but it has big wide halls, big wide doors. And she was in a quad that had a bathroom in there and such. And then those turned out to be great roommates as well. And she's still good friends with them today. Now she's off campus in an apartment with one of the girls that was her roommate. But one of the great things about Seattle U is that the dorms are right there. It's not far away, it's right there. And they're just right in the heart of campus. So that was good for my daughter.
Great. Katya?
Oh, I can just add that, Sophie lived in Campion, I think, the first year, because it has this, I forget what it's called, the technical term, but these different communities, and she really related to some of them, and that you could pick a floor that was that community. And so she loved that aspect. It turned out a great choice for her freshman year. And then second year, she was also in Chardon, and that was also nice. Both of them were really nice living environment, so no complaints there whatsoever. Super close to her classes. She said it's like 5-minute walk or something to her class, so she was never late.
Yeah, students don't need a bike to get across campus to get to class. We are small and condensed, so they literally, you see them literally rolling out in those sweatpants and going off to their classes. Great. Kat, do you want to share anything about?
Yes,
Great.
my son spent 2 years in Bell, and that's actually right by the dining hall student center. And he actually loved it because he could basically walk out one door and walk into the other door and have the dining hall right there. And if he turned in the other direction, right across the crosswalk is Starbucks and a whole bunch of restaurants off campus. He loved it. Co-ed dorm, the bathrooms were clean. And he's been in a 2-person dorm as well as a 3-person dorm because one of his friends couldn't find a roommate, and they decided, let's do a 3-person. And I think that kind of speaks to the community of kids that live in the residence halls, that they all want to like take care of each other. And so he's had a really good experience.
Great. Another question came up about our housing requirement, and yes, we do have a 2-year on-campus residency requirement for students unless they are living at home, right? So if I think they use a 20-mile or so radius in terms of what would be acceptable for a student to live at home and not in the residence halls. Even with that, I think probably, and Lindsay, you may know the more exact number, about 92% of our first-year students in a traditional year tend to live on campus because of that opportunity to be with their peers and to be close to what's happening. So again, that is kind of where, and we know that those students, there's actually decades worth of research that talks about students living on campus tend to have an overall happier experience in their university setting. They tend to do better academically, so their GPA benefits from being in that community as well. So we certainly encourage our students, if possible, although not all have. So Connie, I don't know if you want to share about about Simon not being a residential student.
Yeah, my son is actually a commuter student. He decided when he transferred back to Seattle that he would move home. And I, of course, supported him in whatever his decision was. Though I was sort of looking forward to him being in the dorms, to be honest. But it's worked really well for him. I think that for him, we live only about 8 miles from the school. So he's really close. And he was able to schedule his classes such that he wasn't driving back and forth. And he has a 25-hour-a-week job through all of this, so that he was really able to balance everything well that way. And I think in terms of feeling part of the university, it is a very welcoming university. I know somebody asked about diversity within the student body. There's tremendous diversity within the student body. Our family's Jewish. There's no feeling whatsoever of being left out of anything, depending on your ethnicity, your race, your religion. And I think that for Simon, that was true in terms of him being a commuter student as well.
Great, thanks for sharing that perspective. I know we have a couple of questions about safety and security on campus. We are a very urban campus. I know many of you may not have had an opportunity to visit given COVID. Would you share your perspective on your students and safety and living in the middle of the city?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that, in the sense that I remember when I was at the school, or one of these sessions, they talked about the fact that they have the campus police you can sign up for receiving texts from them to be alerted in case there is any kind of police activity. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I signed up for that, and I had Sophie sign up for it as well. And I have to tell you, it was really comforting as a parent, because the way it works, they send you a text saying like some activity happening at such and such street corner, stay away from that corner. And then, let's say 20 minutes later, or however long, let's say half an hour later, it might say all clear, everything's safe again in that corner. The point being is that it's real time. It's very helpful information. It didn't happen all that often, but as a student, having a student, especially a girl, oh, I don't know. I mean, girls or boys, you just worry obviously for your kids' safety. And so Sophie's said that she's never felt really scared on campus or anywhere in that surrounding community as a result of having that kind of guidance.
Thanks.
I think it's important to also mention the Nighthawk program. The safety department on campus, the Department of Public Safety, is phenomenal. And one of the things that they do offer is an escort service late at night. So that if you have a student that finds themselves at a party that maybe, you know, in a dorm on one side of campus and they're or off campus, and they feel any sense of insecurity, they can make that phone call and be escorted. And I think that sometimes students just don't think that through. And it can be 3 o'clock in the morning, and 3 o'clock in the morning is not really a good time to be anywhere outside. So, so that's great. But I do think the campus really takes good caution, and they have the blue light phones like every 300 feet. And so there's the kinds of things you would expect on college campuses.
One of the things that makes me comforted as a parent, and again, I have a daughter there, is every time I'm there, and I go down and visit quite a bit, and they're one of my clients actually, Seattle U, so I'm down on campus for business too, is there's always a pair of security folks, guards, I don't know what their titles are exactly, but you see them, right? They've got their outfits on, and they're walking around just making sure everything's fine, and they're just ever present. So that always gives me some comfort that if something were not feeling right, you'd have somebody right there.
And we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week public safety force on campus. They are not police, they're a public safety office, and they are there, and you do see them all the time. I don't spend any day on campus where I do not see a couple of public safety officers a few times a day. So.
And Laurie, can I also add, you know, coming from Hawaii, where we're on an island and Seattle is not easily accessible. And with the autonomous zone that was happening, as well as the first year Alex was there as a freshman, there was unprecedented snow where they actually closed down streets. And Seattle U is really, really good about keeping in contact with the parents and making sure that we feel good about it. So for example, the employees couldn't get onto campus to actually do their job because of the snow. And we were given emails saying, don't worry, the resident advisors are there. We're doing games in the common areas. And we do have people in the dining hall that are available, and your kids do have food. And it's, all the things that we would worry about as parents that our kids may not tell us when we're calling them, but I'm comforted to know that they offer a lot of information. And even if my son's not saying what's happening, that I know what's happening. And so then I don't have to pester him and mom him from far away. So I'm super grateful for that.
That's great. Yes, snow in Seattle, if you're not from here, Seattle does not handle snow very well. It's an interesting experience. And we're a very hilly city, and we don't get much snow, and we don't have many snowplows. So they do literally close streets down, certain hilly spots when that does happen. We sometimes joke about it, but would you talk about, particularly some of you folks who have students from sunnier climates, was there any adjustment to being in Seattle or handling some of our wetter, grayer weather? I know for some folks that's a challenge. Go ahead, Katya.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Sophie, even coming from sunny California, she adjusted well to it. I mean, you just set your expectations that it is going to be cloudy and it can rain just like any moment. And so she just got a really good raincoat and you can tell who's from Seattle or not. I guess if someone has an umbrella, they're probably not from Seattle. So it's better just to have a raincoat, because then you just pull up your hood and it rains or not raining. So it just works well. But I have to say that has not been an issue for her. She just loves Seattle for all so many other things, and being outdoors, and you can be outdoors walking on the beach, even in the rain or little drizzle, and just she's adjusted beautifully, I think.
It's not as bad
So
as
for,
people think.
I was going to say, for Alex coming from Hawaii, he just says, well, it's okay, because when the sun's not out, it doesn't make me feel like I want to go out, and I just study more. And so I'm like, yes.
That's great. We hope he's really studying more. That's good. Speaking of that, obviously the academic experience is a critical one. And I know, Katya, you mentioned some things, all of you, about maybe access to professors, or if your students have used any of the academic support services. I can talk about them, but if you have some personal experience with, how your students access their academic advisor or their faculty, or seeking out assistance if they need some.
Well, I can start by saying that for Sophie, she was very impressed with, first of all, the academic advisors. Each year you sit down with them just to pick all your classes for the next year. Super helpful in that process. And then also there's tutoring services readily available if you need them. And then, like I said, just, she has often, if she had questions, she just emails the professor directly, and if she needs extra help, professors have even helped her outside of classroom. I mean, just it's very different. I went to a big research type of public university myself, and I was just stunned at how helpful these professors are, and they really care about these kids. So we've been so happy with that aspect.
Great.
For Alex, my son was diagnosed with ADHD actually at a young age. And by the time he went off to college, with a little bit of medicine, he's able to focus, not a big deal. But this year, with all of the distance learning and having to do things on the computer, it's been very taxing for him. And he called up I think it's the Disability Studies Center, where they help with people students that need accommodations. And Alex just sent in a doctor's note, and he was able to get accommodations of like extra time to do his homework and to take tests, because the video was so hard for him. And it was just super quick and super efficient. And I was really pleased that they were able to step in and help him so quickly.
Great.
My son also had a great experience with academic advising, and as a transfer student, of course, there was that additional thing of what will transfer over in terms of credit and how to continue forward without missing a beat. And he's been able to do that. And he just, registered for spring quarter, his last quarter at the university, and met with his academic advisor for the last time, just to make sure that he had all of his ducks in a row to be graduating in June. And they've been great throughout the entire 4 years.
As far as my experience, Catherine did have some accommodations as well. And I have to say that the school's been great with them, and really understanding when to encourage her to use them and take advantage. And there's like some areas to take testing if that's what you need. And there's grace if you need some additional time to get your work done, if you're not in a space to be able to accomplish that, given what's going on. And so I would say that the school's been excellent in that regard.
Great. Yes, we have a disability services office that does accommodation, and then we have what we call our learning assistance programs. And I think Lindsay has put the link to some of that in the chat, in terms of general, tutoring and helping with group study sessions, or running programs that just in terms of, how to be a better student, right? We want all of our students to take advantage of those things. The best students use all of those resources. There's a writing center to help them with the large amount of writing that they will have at a Jesuit university, no matter if they're a science major, or an English major, they will do a fair amount of writing. So we have that service, and a math center as well for folks who will want some support in math. And I think sometimes our our arts and sciences folks forget that they have math and science requirements as well as part of their core curriculum, so they can get the support around those pieces as well. Some questions have come up about, did your student have a job as a first-year student? Would you recommend that in their first year, or would you recommend waiting for them to kind of get situated? I don't know if any of your students worked in their first year. I can certainly talk about that as well, as having done a number of years of orientation and working with students going through that.
My daughter didn't work freshman year.
Okay.
Son started a new job just within weeks of transferring to Seattle U. And so he was working through starting middle of sophomore year, and really found, I think it really helped him with his organization and planning. He didn't miss a beat in terms of school. Now he's working at a K-12 school, and they're also understanding about his final schedule and things along those lines. So he might have a little more flexibility than some jobs have, but it really has been great for him. And I think it's really kept him organized, and it's given him a great sense of purpose.
Alex worked on campus before COVID hit, and his job was part of the work study program. So the beauty of the work study program is if there's not work to do, you can study. And so he actually has a passion for audiovisual type equipment and working with that sort of equipment. And he got a job at like the AV equipment center. And so people come in and check out cameras and video equipment for their projects and their classes. And he would show them how to use it. But when no one's there to check it out, because it's kind of like a library of AV equipment, he'd study and he'd get paid. And for those of you that don't live in the Seattle area, Seattle's minimum wage, Washington's minimum wage is quite high. I want to say, I think it's, what is it, Lori? $15?
About 16 now. It's a little higher.
$16. I mean, in Hawaii, it's not even 10. So I was like, oh my goodness, like he's making good money. And so that was really good spending money for him as well.
That's great. This question does come up a lot, and I ran our orientation program for a couple of decades. And I will say, watching first year students, Connie mentioned kind of keeping Simon organized. Having some work time helps them build a schedule, right? Because in the collegiate environment, students are only in class roughly 15 hours a week. And of course, they have an extended amount of time they hopefully are devoting to their studies outside of class, but it helps them structure their day. Most of our first year students have an on-campus position, like Kat talked about Alex having an on-campus position. And we tend to be a little more flexible with the students who work in our offices, because we know their schedule changes every quarter. So, right, maybe they worked Monday mornings from 9 to noon in fall quarter, but now they have a class then in winter quarter. So we adjust their hours for the most part, so that, because obviously we want their academics to be their primary piece, but it helps shape their time and their week. It gives them a little more organization. If they do have a work study position, it may say that they can work 20 hours a week. That is the max when a student is full-time. But I will tell you from working with first year students for quite a while that I would say 12 hours a week for a freshman or so, more than the 20 hours a week, particularly when they start, so that they can really prioritize their academics. So some work, but maybe not something, sounds like Simon's as a senior is working quite a bit, but that's different. He's learned to adjust his time by now.
And Simon actually just gave notice and quit his job so that his last quarter, he can just have college. He's really looking forward to that.
Congratulations on almost having a graduate, Connie. That's a very exciting time. Great. A question came up about cars on campus. Did any of your students take a car? No need in Seattle, correct?
Catherine had a car for a short while, and it's just not worth it. I mean, the tickets, the parking, it's not worth it.
Yeah. And we have.
I would just add that you really don't actually even need it. I mean, you can take the underground, I forget what it's called there, but anyway, it's close by, and just everything's nearby that you could ever need, and just she even bicycles sometimes to other places.
Yeah, Seattle parking is actually not very pleasant. We obviously have some on-campus parking, but it is costly, and it's not a reserved spot. And if to take the car out in the city, and for first-year students, frankly, we have a no-car policy unless there's a real need for an exception. And there is a process if a student absolutely needs to have a car for some reason in their first year. But as a matter of policy, we typically have not had them. Sometimes I see a question about, nursing students when they're into their practicum, which was not in their first year, may need a car because they may be traveling a distance to get to wherever that practicum site is, but they would not be in that situation in their first year of the nursing program. If they're a transfer student coming in, they may be jumping into that, and that's a different situation. Great. You talked a bit about housing and selecting roommates. Do you have any memories or tips for how your students selected the roommate? We do allow students to select their own and make their own pairing, but not everybody does or has to. Anything about picking a roommate?
Yeah, I'll just say that it seems like with this generation of kids that it's pretty easy for them because they have that Facebook page where they can all join, and I don't exactly know what all they do there, but I can tell you that for Sophie, it was easy. She quickly found a match and it worked out great. And I don't know, it just seems so easy for them these days because they can really see their pictures, have a conversation about with a potential roommate.
Most students now make their own matches, and they have ways of connecting that, years ago nobody ever did. So but also frequently I wouldn't call it a random pairing. I mean, when the housing folks put students together, they look at it through a lens of kind of lifestyle. Are you a late night person? Are you a morning person? Are you neat? do you have issues about keeping your room really neat? Do you study with music? Those kinds of things, which is really, those are some of the pieces that make the roommate pairing, right? A better pairing to live in a small space as opposed to we're best friends. So that's where we focus. And I think if some of your students may have, and I could say, I'm not sure I would want to live with my best friend all the time, but I might want to have somebody who has a compatible lifestyle to share that space. So that's what we hope students will focus on in no matter how they choose to get their roommate selection. I think in general, we only hear horror stories about roommates, right? Those are the things you hear, but frankly, most of them do just fine. Most pairings work out really, really well. Can you talk about your students' class sizes at all? Have they talked to you about, number of folks? We are a small institution. Does anybody have any thoughts from what your students have shared about the size of their classes?
I can speak to that. When we first went on preview day before Alex chose Seattle U, as a computer science perspective student, we were led into a classroom as a group of parents and students where they talked about, what the computer science program was going to look like. And they basically said, this is our biggest lecture hall. And I think that it may have fit 100 kids in it. And you are not going to have classes with 100 children, with 100 students in it. All of the teachers know all of the kids' names, and all of the teachers are professors. They're not teachers' aides. So they're really, really getting quality, small group, classroom, quality education.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think Sophie's told me that her class sizes have been, the largest one maybe was 25, and then some of her classes are even as small as 10 or 12 students. So talk about, really feeling part of the learning environment with your professor knowing you by name, and you really have meaningful conversations with these professors. She's really enjoyed that.
We do not have large spaces, large classroom auditoriums at all. Great.
Yeah, and then I would just add that at least in the science and technology, if your children are considering that, they are going to have a brand new building that's opening up next year, the Senegal building. So that's going to be awesome.
We can't wait. I was on campus the other day, and it's really starting to look incredible. Great. Have any of your students changed majors? I know somebody started as a pre-major, which is a very common major, but it's not unusual for students to change. I will just tell you that the average technically seems to be 3 times for a student maybe is going to change their major, but
Yeah, Sophie changed majors. She came into the Albert School of Business, and she enjoyed it, but it was just like the math was a little much for her, the calculus and everything, and so she ended up changing to communications, and it was very easy to do, very supportive. The advisory group was super helpful in terms of seeing what classes still apply towards her degree, and just working all of that logistics out. So it seems like she has lots of friends who changed majors many times.
And Catherine, the same thing. So she came in as a pre-major, and she took some psychology classes and some Chinese classes. And so then she settled in on computer science engineering. I would say that due to the sequential nature of it, she is adding an extra year. So and a lot of that is, that capstone project that they do in their senior year. So she is going an extra year. So
those science and engineering majors are right. It is sequential. Much of their work is sequential, and so starting early, whereas some of the other programs may start more heavily in our core curriculum and work their way into the majors more. But the science and engineering folks really do start from the get-go with a combo of core and major related classes. We are a Jesuit institution, as we all know. Can you talk about your sense of how you see a Jesuit philosophy maybe showing up in how your students are experiencing their academic, or just as they're developing into citizens of the world?
I really like that you ended with talking about citizens of the world, because I really think a Jesuit education provides an opportunity for students to be formed in a way that they see themselves as global citizens, and they see themselves as having responsibilities to others. And I had mentioned earlier that we come from a different faith. We're not of the Catholic faith. There's a lot of diversity on campus in terms of people's observance or not, or not having an interest in it. But I think that the main thing that the Jesuit education really provides for students is a sense of purpose and a sense of something beyond themselves. And for young people that are 18, 19, 20 years old, it's just phenomenal to know that they're going through their development in college, thinking about their responsibility to serve the world in important ways.
I'll say that, yeah, that's very, I like that question. Just, it's a good topic to talk about amongst us parents, especially because so many people come from different religions to the school, and the school just embraces all of us. But my husband is a Muslim and I'm Christian, and we raised our kids just not necessarily with any one religion. And I'll have to say that Sophie has really embraced the fact that it is a Jesuit education, because as Connie mentioned, it's raising the global citizens. And I have to say, in almost all the classes that Sophie has had, they really look at it through, they encourage the students to look at it through the lens of what's the right choice ethically and socially, and it just really, it permeates through many classes, I would say, and really shapes and forms their thinking. And Sophie's really enjoyed that aspect, and also just learning more about the Jesuit history, and it's been really really something that she's enjoyed.
We are a diverse campus in all ways, racially, ethnically, spiritually. And somebody did ask a question about related to requirements. There's a religious studies class and some philosophy classes as part of the core, but they are not necessarily within, you don't have to take a religious studies class in Christianity. It can be related to another world religion at your choice. And those are the only requirements in terms of that well-rounded education, to know something about religion as part of the global experience. So, and students, like I said, can choose from a huge variety of things. Trying to think of what the questions around internships. Internships typically don't start in the first year, right? Depending on the program, it might be not until the junior year. Can any of you speak to your students' experience with internships or trying to find them? I know some of them are in that process now. What's that like?
Catherine is looking for one at the moment. You know, again, she's just newer into the comp sci. I do have to tell you that the school did sponsor her to go to Grace Hopper, which is a women's technology conference, and that was fantastic. It was a great experience. Unfortunately, it was done virtually this year. So hopefully she'll get that opportunity next year along with some of the other women comp sci. But for her, it did not wind up in an internship yet, but that's still on her radar.
So my son Alex did get an internship the summer of his junior going into his senior year. Of course, computer science, fabulous, being in Seattle. What I would highly recommend, I don't want to speak about his internship, but more along the process of how to possibly get one. If, for example, if you're in the computer science program, you want to join their club, because then you've got the mentors of the students that are the sophomores that are looking for internships, the juniors and the seniors that have maybe already had internships. And what Alex found out his freshman year is there's actually like this green internship book on interviewing for computer science jobs. And he got all of that kind of information from joining the computer science club. And now as a junior, he's actually the president of that club. And he's mentoring a lot of the younger kids or the younger students on how to go about doing that. And he's constantly, now that he's at home and I'm watching him in all of his meetings, showing that green book and talking to, you know, his fellow peers, like one-on-one on, you know, what you should do and how to pound the pavement. And so it's really, what I would say is that like college networking with your peers and those that came before you, that I think really, really helped. On top of the professors that also helped him with their connections and all of that.
The clubs are huge on campus. You're right, Kat. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yes, very huge. Oh, and then the other thing too is because there's so many opportunities in Seattle in various areas, and the subway system and the mass transit is so good that it's really, really easy to get to all different places. Like Alex's internship is going to be up by Gasworks Park, which is around the University of Washington area. And he does not have a car, but he just needs to take a couple of blocks, a walk of a couple of blocks from Seattle U to get on mass transit, and he'll be there in 15 minutes. And so he's like, no, I don't need a car. You don't need a car. And so there's a lot of places. Google's up there, Tableau, Amazon is really close. And there's just a lot of opportunities. And if you're in the nursing program, so many hospitals around that area as well.
Yeah, I can't really overemphasize how much Seattle University is right where the jobs are for so many of the students. I mean, you can walk from the university to the center of downtown Seattle in 15 minutes. I mean, it's just remarkable. So I think that goes a long way. And you're right, the public transportation helps as well. But a lot of kids, they can actually walk downtown, which is pretty amazing, which Amazon's big headquarters.
Great. I'm noticing time and we're getting close. Words of wisdom just from our CLU parents in terms of the college search process, or, if you had to do it over again, what would you do the same? What might you do differently? What were things that maybe CLU helped seal the deal for you? You mentioned some of that in the beginning, but it's a big choice. We know all of you, right? And this is a year that's been very challenging in terms of how to even go about learning about universities, given our virtual world. So any words of wisdom?
I mean, I think I would say that if you're looking for a really caring community, Seattle U really is that. Because last year, as Lori mentioned and everybody knows, yeah, it was really tough for these kids. I mean, being on, taking school online, but Sophie said that the professors just did a fantastic job in that way, teaching virtually. So that's, just it's one example of the many of why Seattle University cares for the students so much and how they do everything. So we also said that there's excellent program called CAPS. I don't know what the acronym is, but it's basically for like social and mental health issues. If students are experiencing that, it's a resource for them and it's readily available. And she said it's just another great thing to have. And so it's just, all I could say is sing the praises for Seattle University, only because it's been such a genuinely fantastic time for my daughter, and it was just so the right choice. It never looked back. So I hope you end up choosing Seattle U for your kids. Can't go wrong.
The first thing that came to mind for me, Katia, was also just the wraparound services and support. Your child will not be a number. And that's something really important. And I think particularly for kids that have been so isolated in this past year, to know that they're coming into a warm, welcoming place that truly cares about them as individuals is key. The other thing I would say about Seattle U, I just keep thinking about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's not too big and it's not too small, right? There are some very small liberal arts institutions where your kid will also have the opportunity for small class sizes and for getting to know their professors. But if they want to change their major, they may be in really deep trouble. Seattle U has a variety of academic options that allows them to really span a number of different areas. And it's large enough to provide that diversity while being small enough that they really don't have to worry they're going to be in a 200-person lecture hall for half of their college career. That's just not going to happen at Seattle U. So I just feel like it's just sort of that right size.
Thanks. I love that analogy.
I have to say, there's a couple things that stand out for me too. So Catherine at Xavier, they had a lot of students from all over. She had studied Chinese, the language, in high school. And so when she got to school, she gravitated to a lot of the folks that were from Asia. And over Thanksgiving, it was too far for folks to go home. So we had 10 people at our house celebrating Thanksgiving, many of them for the first time. And to get to our house, you cross over a floating bridge on this beautiful lake, and we live by the mountains. And I have to say, it's been fascinating for these folks to see this part of the world. It's gorgeous. You can go hiking, boating. You can see beautiful tulip fields. Catherine took a bunch of girls up to see the flowers. So in terms of being a fun place to be, that is here. And also the community, like I said, I call on Seattle U as one of my clients, and I'm really into the technology community. And I see them bringing in different businesses and community leaders as part of the school. And anyway, it's just really exciting. I mean, they've got their pulse on the technology scene and the corporate scene too. So even though Catherine hasn't gotten her internship yet, there's tons of opportunity there for your child to be proactive about it, and for those businesses investing in Seattle U. So those are a couple things.
Thanks, Nancy.
Choose SU. You won't regret it. We didn't.
Well, what more can be said after that? I'm noticing the time. We want to thank you all for sharing this hour with us. I know Lindsay has put in the chat the link for the 2 o'clock session that will have representatives from some of these services and things you've asked about. And we also will be saving this chat and putting together a document answering the questions that we talked about already, but also the things that we did not get to, and sending that to you. Give us a little bit of time to do the research and get all of that information out, but that will be coming to you. And I'm sure you all have the email address for our admissions office. Since you're still in that, they are your key resource at this point. But I would also mention, and we'll put this in our list, we have a Seattle U Parent and Family Facebook page that is for families of current and admitted students. If you'd like to link to that, I know the admissions folks have that link, and I have it as well. And it's a place for parents to ask questions back and forth between themselves. Again, thank you so much. We know this is a challenging time given COVID. We can't answer with specifics what fall will look like. We are certainly hoping to return to some more level of normalcy. I don't think it'll be exactly as things were in the past, but we are planning to be more like that if we are at all able. And we hope you all stay well. Take care. Thanks, everyone.